We've all heard that green tea is good for you, right? But what if I told you that one of its key ingredients is showing some absolutely stunning potential in the fight against cancer? Today, we're diving deep into the science of a really cool compound called L-theanine.
So, that's the big question, isn't it? Could this simple little compound, something you find in a regular old cup of tea, actually be a secret weapon in our modern medical toolkit? Well, the lab evidence we're about to walk through is, well, it's pretty darn compelling.
All right, so what exactly is L-theanine? In a nutshell, it's a unique amino acid. Now, that just means it's not one of the standard 20 that our bodies use to build proteins. You pretty much only find it in the green tea plant. And here's a really important clue to how it works. Its structure looks a lot like glutamate, which is a huge signaling molecule in our bodies. Remember that part. It's going to be important later.
Okay, so after years of lab work, scientists have figured out that L-theanine seems to have this incredible three-pronged attack against cancer. Think of it like a coordinated strategy. So let's jump into the first part of that attack, how it goes after cancer cells directly.
And what's just wow about this is the range of evidence. We're not just talking about one kind of cancer here. In lab models, so in petri dishes and the like, for lung, prostate, melanoma, and liver cancer, scientists saw the same thing over and over. L-theanine consistently slowed down growth. It stopped the cancer from spreading, and it actually triggered programmed cell death. That process is called apoptosis, and it's basically the cell's self-destruct button. And this right here, this is the really crucial part: selectivity. L-theanine isn't like a sledgehammer just destroying everything in its path. The research shows that it's smart. It can actually tell the difference between cancer cells and healthy cells. It hits that self-destruct button on the cancer cells, but it leaves the normal, healthy ones completely alone. I mean, that kind of selective targeting, that's basically the holy grail of cancer therapy.
But L-theanine doesn't just work alone. It's not a solo act. For the second part of its attack, it actually plays the role of a super-powered sidekick, making our conventional treatments, like chemo, even more powerful.
Yeah, the fancy term for it is a chemoadjuvant. But honestly, just think of it like a booster pack for chemotherapy. The data is showing it can seriously ramp up the tumor-killing power of major drugs like doxorubicin, making them way more effective than they'd be on their own.
So, you're probably wondering, how on earth does it do that? This is where things get really clever. See, cancer cells are tricky. They have these built-in pumps that act like escape hatches, kicking chemo drugs out before they can do any damage. Well, L-theanine comes in and basically locks all the doors. It blocks the transporters on the surface, which cuts off the cell's supply of a key substance called glutathione. And that, in turn, slams the main escape hatch shut. So the chemo drug gets trapped inside the cancer cell, where it can finally do its job.
All right, for the third and final part of its attack, L-theanine completely changes its game plan. It stops focusing only on the cancer cell itself. Instead, it starts remodeling the entire battlefield, which is, our own bodies.
First up, it rebalances our immune system. You see, there's a type of immune response, called Th2, that can actually create inflammation that helps tumors grow. It's not what you want, but L-theanine seems to push the system over to a Th1 response, which is the body's main anti-tumor team. It's kind of like switching your football team's strategy from a soft defense to an all-out blitz, calling in the big guns of your immune system. And it doesn't stop there. It really doubles down by calming down chronic inflammation, which we know is basically fuel for cancer. Think of it like this. It finds the master switch for inflammation in our cells, this thing called NF-kappa B, and it just flips it off. It also dials down a bunch of other inflammatory signals. So the end result? It makes our body a much, much tougher place for a tumor to live, let alone grow.
Okay, so we've got this incredible three-part strategy, right? And it all looks amazing in the lab. But this is where the story takes a really critical turn. We've got to talk about the huge leap it takes to go from a promising result in a petri dish to an actual treatment for a person.
And honestly, the research paper we're looking at says it perfectly. It says while the preclinical data are compelling, there exists a significant gap in translational research. What that really means is, all the stuff we just talked about, it's super compelling, but there's a giant chasm between what we've seen in the lab and what we know about how it affects actual people with cancer.
In this chart, wow, it just lays that gap bare. Look at this. On one side, you have dozens and dozens of preclinical studies. That's all the work in test tubes and with animals. But then you look for human clinical trials,
trials that are actually testing if L-theanine helps with cancer outcomes, and there is one. Just one.
And get this, that one study wasn't even looking at its cancer-fighting abilities. It was a quality-of-life trial. It found that a 200 milligram dose was safe and helped cancer patients who are struggling with insomnia to sleep better. Now that's a great finding, don't get me wrong, but it tells us absolutely nothing about whether those amazing effects we saw in the lab actually happen in people to treat the disease itself.
Okay, so let's pull this all together. What's the bottom line? In the lab, L-theanine looks like an absolute powerhouse. It attacks cancer cells head-on, it gives chemo a major boost, and it changes our body's internal environment to be hostile to tumors. But, and you knew there was a but coming, this is a big one. All of this incredibly compelling evidence has pretty much not been tested in human cancer trials.
And that leaves us with one final and I think really powerful question. The lab science is, well, it's undeniable. It's so promising. So the question is, isn't it time we actually invested in the research to bridge this gap? To finally find out if the incredible potential we're seeing in a simple teacup can actually make a difference in the clinic?